Hello, everybody. I'm Roger Silverman. I've been a lifelong political activist. I was born into a socialist environment. My father, Sidney Silverman, was a Left MP for 33 years until his death, and for a time an NEC member himself. First of all, on your specific questions, just as we elect our branch officials at AGMs, in the same way, I'll fight for open selection. We have to elect our candidates for office in just the same way. Nobody should have a job for life. I'm in favour of the right to vote to all British citizens, irrespective of where they choose to live, and also, by the way, for anybody who lives in Britain, irrespective of their nationality. I am fully in support of the 2019 manifesto commitment to a green industrial revolution and for complete solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and actually for the expulsion of all those bureaucrats who were revealed to have been persecuting Diane Abbott and other BAME figures with racist comments. Now, why am I standing? To stand up for the rights of the rank and file members, and above all, to restore party morale. Too many party members are leaving in despair. Despair at Labour's election defeat in 2019, and frankly despair also at the rightward shift of the leadership since that time. That's not what the membership voted for. 135,000 people voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey, standing explicitly on Jeremy Corbyn's programme, and most of the rest voted for Keir Starmer, trusting his pledge to carry forward the Corbyn legacy. Now we see that Rebecca's been sacked from the front bench, and the new General Secretary has actually written to CLPs dictating that none of the crucial questions worrying the party members are, quote, competent business for discussion. What effect can this have except to demoralise party members and contribute further to the fall in membership? Under capitalism, we all face a grim future. A wave of new pandemics due to the encroachments of agribusiness on wild habitat, a looming slump, worse by some sober estimates than any not since just the 30s, but even 1709, a worldwide rash of racist and authoritarian regimes, and imminent environmental catastrophe. No wonder all over the world people are rising to their feet for social justice. The youth in their magnificent Extinction Rebellion campaign, entire populations from Chile to Hong Kong and Algeria and Sudan, in America for Black Lives Matter, in Lebanon against state corruption, in Belarus for democratic rights. This is not a time for compromise and moderation. Labour should stand shoulder to shoulder alongside them as part of this worldwide movement with full-blooded socialist policies. That's why we need real socialists on the NEC to call the leadership to account. We need to nail the media lie that Labour's election programme was a vote loser. The truth is that Labour under Corbyn in 2019 won more votes than under Miliband in 2015, Brown in 2010, and even Blair in 2005 when Labour won. Only in 2017, also under Corbyn, did Labour do even better. We need to recognise that left policies still have overwhelming majority support.
Can you wind up? Sorry, Roger, can you begin to wind up now?
Sure. A wealth tax, more funding for the NHS, a green industrial revolution, etc. We need to fight back against this arrogant and bungling government, which has already caused tens of thousands of needless deaths. That's why I'm standing. If you want to know more about what I believe in, please look at my website, silvermanfornec.org. Thanks for listening. I know something about anti-Semitism. My grandparents were refugees from pogroms in Eastern Europe. My maternal grandfather was a victim of a racist murder when he arrived in Liverpool en route to America at the beginning of the 20th century. I myself was a member of a socialist Zionist youth organization when I was a teenager. And my father, Sidney Silverman, was secretary of the British section of the World Jewish Congress at the beginning of the Second World War, and in that capacity was one of the first to warn about the approaching Holocaust. So I do know something about this subject. Now, first of all, let's put it in context. The anti-Semitic party in Britain is the Tories. They have a long history of anti-Semitic smears and sneers. Even as recently as 2015, the Daily Mail and The Sun were making veiled anti-Semitic sneers against Ed Miliband when he was leading the party. The left has a record of standing against racism of all kinds, and it also, I would just like to emphasize that in at the time of the post-war Labour government, when there were thousands of Holocaust survivors from the concentration camps who were desperately crossing the Mediterranean in ships to settle in Palestine, not because they wanted to impose a state of their own, but because they needed somewhere to live. And I fully respect the right of these displaced people to a homeland. And I am completely against any suggestion that the population of Israel, who've been there for 2 or 3 generations now, should be asked to leave. But I also, as socialists, we have to stand also for the rights of the indigenous Arab and Palestinian population. And we have to stand firm and not be intimidated from saying that the policies that Israel is practicing are against what any humanitarian and any socialist should be expected to stand for. I believe that in a 2-state solution, or better still, I would prefer a single state in which all communities and all religions, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, should live in harmony, and there should be no privileges and no oppression of any national or community group. That's what I stand for. I think it's outrageous that some people have been deliberately misinterpreted as being anti-Semitic for simply standing up for what is elementary human rights.
Right.
Right. Well, look, the very author of the IHRA definition has said publicly that he's appalled that it's being used as a definition of anti-Semitism and being used for political purposes in that way. The question is, I've said already, the existence of the Israeli state, as far as I'm concerned, I have absolutely no question about the existence of the Israeli state. I don't believe it was a good idea to form it. I don't believe that the formation of Pakistan, for instance, around the same time was a good idea either. I'm against the idea of religious-based or community-based states. But once the state is established and generations have grown up there, then of course that is their home and their homeland, and they have the right to stay. What I'm talking about is standing for a solution which doesn't penalize one community or doesn't safeguard the rights of one community at the expense of another. And there is no question that in Palestine now, we see a horrible denial of elementary human rights to the Palestinian population. And all I'm saying is, and I will not be, I'll defy anybody to consider this anti-Semitic in any way. It would be an outrage, make my blood boil, such an accusation. But the question is that we must stand up for human rights for all communities and not give preference to one over the others. And that's my reason. I think that the IHRA definition has been abused and perverted for political purposes. I would say one other thing if I have time. I talked about my father's record. In the 1940s, under the Labour government, those Holocaust survivors who were crossing the Mediterranean, trying to establish a homeland for their own, quite correctly so and quite understandably so, in Palestine, the ships they were travelling in were strafed and bombed in the same way as refugees crossing the Mediterranean today are. And that was under a Labour government, under a right-wing Labour Foreign Secretary, Ernest Bevin. That was the policy. That was the policy that my father was fighting against. He later, I mean, he was a Zionist. There's actually, I believe when he died, a forest was named after my father in his honor, and I'm proud of that. But my father died fighting against the right-wing policies and militaristic policies of the Israeli government after the Suez War in '56 and the war against the occupation of the territories in 1967. He died in 1968, a very disappointed man. and I'm standing by his heritage and his legacy. Thanks, comrades. First of all, I want to congratulate Labour International on organising that. There's been too few of such events in this election campaign, and you must have had special problems with all the time differences and so on. So congratulations. It's been a really vigorous, healthy debate, really enjoyable. All points of view were represented, and we debated our differences openly, honestly, and in a comradely fashion. The outlook ahead of us now, I'm afraid, leaves no room for pussyfooting around or for moderation. We have the pandemic and maybe worse pandemics to come. We have a terrible economic catastrophe coming. And above all, we have a catastrophe of affecting even the extinction of the human species. So all in all, we have to take bold, clear, and I would say full-blooded socialist measures to address this. All I would say is please consider seriously nominating me and voting for me to be on the NEC, so that there is at least a genuine representation of all shades of opinion, and we can go together forward in a comradely fashion, having had a thorough, proper discussion and debate on the best way forward for all of us. So thank you again and goodbye.